So we can start. Over to you, Renan. Please take over.
Okay. Good afternoon and good evening to all, and thanks for your presence. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So welcome everyone to another book talk series presented by the Consortium for Research on Innovation Studies, or AKA CRIS network, in association with Assist UK and the University of Malaya North-South Research Center. Today we're hosting a very special discussion panel on the book Reimagining Innovation Systems in COVID and Post-COVID World. But before we start, I would like to say a few words on the CRIS network. CRIS is a network formed by early career researchers, many of them also coming from the Globalix network. And Professor Lundvall is also our patron and guide in this mission. We usually run a series of lectures and book talks for the benefit of those early career researchers, especially those coming from the Global South developing countries. The CRIS network is also run on a pro bono basis. The University of Malaya supports with the Zoom platform and also our website. So we also always like to leave like a special thanks for Professor Bhaskara and Muchie for this kind gesture of providing this structure. Regarding the event itself, it will be a 90 minutes event with first 15 minutes book presentation, then a 60-minute panel discussion, and in the end, another 10 to 15 minutes of a Q&A session. Yeah. For the Q&A session, I kindly requested the audience to write down your questions in the chat box. And when the Q&A session slot starts, I will call the names of the participants who wrote the questions, and also I will ask them to ask them themselves the questions. I'll open the microphones, they can open themselves and ask the questions. I also kindly request keeping the questions very short and straight to the point, yeah, so we can cover all of them, and as many people can also send a question. So I appreciate all of you for this collaboration. As for myself, my name is Renan Compagnoli, as Rajesh has said. I am also early career researcher on innovation studies, currently at HTW University in Berlin, Germany. So without like any further delays, let's go directly to the topic. The book Reimagining Innovation Systems in COVID and Post-COVID World is a result of a global community of prominent innovation scholars who attempted to approach this topic. I read the book, and I think this book addressed very important questions to reimagine not only national systems of innovation, but also global ones, and how they can help us providing future shocks as COVID, or even enable the provision of common goods and development for developing countries. Yeah, the essays encompasses several papers from those prominent scholars, and they tackle challenges on innovation system in uncertain times, how the innovation systems responded to the COVID-19, and also a critical analysis on innovation policies in the context of COVID. So for our panel today, for our book talk, our chair will be Professor Dr. Lakhwinder Singh. He's a co-author of today's book and a co-editor and also co-organizing together with Professor KJ Joseph. Dr. Singh will chair this panel, as I said. He's the president of the Indian Society of Labor Economics conference and a professor also in the Institute for Human Development in New Delhi. Previously, he has been also a professor and head of Department of Economics in Punjab University and the founding editor of Millennium Asian and International Journal of Asian Studies, published by SAGE. He's also specialized in development economics, innovation systems, regional economics, and Punjab economy. We also have with us here Dr. Ruchi Sharma. She's a professor at the Indian Institute of Technology, Indore. Her research focuses on economics of innovation, international economics, patent policy and technological transfers, and she also published tens of articles on those topics with many awards. She also organized and hosts several lectures and seminars and webinars, just like this one self, in her areas of interest. With us, we also have Dr. Papia Singh Gupta. She's a faculty member at the Center of Political Studies in Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. She's also a research fellow in several universities in Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America. And she's a political scientist who researches public policy, intersectionality, language democracy, governance, cultural diversity societies, and also decoloniality in Global South. She also has a very impressive recent work on COVID-19, who has also drawn even some media attention from big outlets. Also with us, I don't know if I already have the opportunity to join, but Professor KJ Joseph, who is also a co-author of the book, co-editor and co-organizer. He's currently the director of the Gulat Institute of Finance in Taxation. And he's also the president of Globalix. His areas of expertise also include innovation studies, international economics, and technology. He's also the founding editor-chief of Innovation Development published by Taylor and Francis in London. And previously, he had several positions in the Ministry of Commerce and also as a visiting professor in several universities across the globe and consultant also for the United Nations. And last but not least, with us also Dr. Mammo Muchie. He's a researcher, professor of Science, Technology, Innovation Studies at Chivana University of Technology in South Africa. And he's also associate fellow at various African universities and the founder of the African Journal of Science, Technology, Innovation, and Development. Previously, he also taught and researched in several universities in Asia, Europe, and North America. Okay, so now all presentations being done, with no further delays, I will hand the word over to Professor Lakhwinder Singh, then he can chair today's panel.
Thank you very much, Renan. Let me share the screen. I hope the screen is visible now. Is it visible?
No, sir, it's not visible.
No. Is it not visible?
Nice to see you all.
Okay.
Not yet.
We
not
see
yet.
you.
I think it's visible now. Is it
Now
visible?
visible, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now
now
visible.
it's
Okay.
visible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Renan. Professor Mammo Muchie, I have seen him on
Nice
the
to see you.
screen. Professor Ruchi Sharma, Professor Papia Singh Gupta, Dr. Rajesh GK, scholars, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all in this book talk. Especially, you have been great in terms of sparing your time to participate in the book talk, which is on the issue of reimagining innovation system in the COVID and post-COVID world. This book has a lot of churning which is expected to happen, and it provides some kind of fundamental material on the basis of which future envisioning of the global system and role of innovation system can be devised, designed, and worked out. So you will find that this is a joint contribution of myself and Professor KJ Joseph. Professor KJ Joseph was expected to join. Perhaps he will join a little later due to his busy schedule. But I think that the joint contribution of Professor KJ Joseph and myself has been available to all of you, which we will going to discuss today. This book is special because of several things. The first thing is that this is having high degree of diversity, both in terms of covering the geographical space as well as gender diversity. So this book has especially designed 17 chapters. The 23 scholars around the world participated, in which you'll find that gender balancing happened to be very important. So the next important issue which perhaps you would like to understand that how this book has been brought in, what is the context of this book in which they should be examined. We all know that COVID-19 has huge amount of devastation, both in human life as well as humanly evolved and woven institutions which govern the global system. Even the United Nations Secretary has talked about that you'll find that the people we serve and represent may lose faith, not only in their governments and institutions, but in the values that have animated the work of the United Nations for over 75 years. So that does mean the COVID-19 pandemic has severely affected the global governance system. And I think that the stress and strain was felt everywhere. Now, most importantly, this has given an opportunity for capital to reorganize, allowing the new technologies to penetrate at a faster rate. That does mean that earlier the two wars, the First World War and Second World War, has allowed capital to reorganize. Similarly, you'll find that this is the COVID has served the same purpose to reorganize the capital, and crisis of capital is relatively being eased and new technologies penetrated, which was happening on a so slow speed. So this has given a rise to techno monopolies, suppression of democratic rights by the state, and tectonic shift of public policy. So dialogue was going on during the COVID period among the scholars, and the scholars were thinking about there is a possibility of emergence of new global economic, social, and political order. And therefore, you'll find that globalist community also thought to participate in such kind of dialogue which was happening. And therefore, the dialogue which was organized in the form of a conference from 12 to 14 October 21, the discussion took place for 3 days, and then you'll find that the outcome is the book, which is nowadays in our hands. Now, what is the contribution of this book? The book has contribution in terms of enlisting and analyzing the challenges to innovation system in uncertain times. 4 chapters are specially designed to understand the challenges of COVID shock, which has posed also, the challenges as well as measures that how future shocks can be prevented. So global governance, uneven development of technology and innovation system directs the change in the global leadership in historical times. But current struggle has been very well known in the COVID during and post-COVID period of time, China and USA. So monopolized technologies aiming to substituting for human intelligence requires rethinking through innovation theory and public policy. So that does mean that the new technologies which are assuming the human intelligence and earlier talked about that they are going to work together with the humans, and the human mind is going to be subservient to these kind of technology is very important for the innovation theory and public policy. So what we are expected to attain is balanced and sustainable development. It is a challenge, and there are 4 pillars which requires a kind of balance, but material development, environment, access to health and socio-economic inequality, these are imbalanced, which we are able to know from that and requires a reconsideration. So interconnected challenges, which are very important, and knowledge and capacities to respond to the external shocks, organizations and interaction to address social challenges, capacity to design and implement science, technology, and innovation policies, and global connectivity for coordination between public and private sectors. To develop socio-institutional innovation and capacity building in public organization to prevent future shocks are one of the challenges enlisted in this particular kind of book. The another 5 chapters assessing the direction of innovations. It is the response to the innovation system in the times of COVID-19 crisis. So the most important aspect here is the COVID-19 shock activated the national governments. People usually talk about that the deglobalization, and national governments, based on existing capacities, devised emergency measures while harnessing social and institutional innovation from national, regional, and sectoral innovation systems. So it has allowed to use all the available subsystems and integrated those systems to, you will find that, improve upon and serve the kind of technological solutions required to serve the crisis. It has also allowed to emergence of monopoly rights over capabilities to discover vaccines, production capacity and distribution due to IPR regimes. It's a global IPR regime which is highly promoting monopolies. That has increased the cost of the vaccine, and it has played over the human lives. Systematic development of sequence of new scientific innovation that allowed COVID infection to be contained from its spread, but wide differentials have been noticed between the haves and have-nots of scientific capabilities. Those who have, they were able to survive better. Those who do not have left on the COVID and the nature that they have a capacity to survive, otherwise they cannot, because even surplus available vaccines were there, but you'll find that those vaccines were not allowed to be distributed where it was needed. So systematic development of sequence of new scientific innovations that allowed COVID infection to be contained from its spread, you'll find that scientific capabilities were limited, and therefore you'll find devastation happened over a period of time. So innovative firms faced COVID shock. They have been, some who have been doing research and development, they are relatively better placed to face the shock compared to the others. The final section talks about critical perspective on innovation policy in the COVID crisis. So there were 6 chapters included, which are summarizing the country experience, analyzing, critically evaluating how actually state behaved in various countries of the world to understand that how innovation system can be reimagined so that the role of the state as well as the role of the markets can be redirected. So usual experience, which is observed from all these studies, increasing the role of markets and withdrawal of the state in both COVID and post-COVID scenario. That is a very important lesson one has to learn from this particular book. The second is a reversal in terms of taking measures to save the life of the citizens, extreme form of intervention of the state, and curtailment of freedom of the citizens. This is very important to understand that freedom of speech and fundamental rights have been curbed systematically during this particular period of time, may not be restored in the post-COVID period, which is very important for the survival of the humans in terms of expressing and enjoying the free life, which are expected to be more creative as well as more serving each other. More freedom to monopoly capital was assigned. The experience of Germany, India, and several other countries have been is live evidence on that. So emergence of inequality is very important to understand that is the kind of strain on the economic system. But experience of change in short-term behavior of the humans can be used to attain long-term goal of sustainability. We can understand that the environmentally friendly attitude of the humans during that particular period of time is an important lesson that can save the future of the world in terms of, as in India, we have the temperature in the summer exceeding to 50 degree in some of the states of India. So that is the kind of heat where large number of people are dying with heat from heat wave. So new development models were expected to happen and proposed in this particular book. And therefore, you'll find that those are placing emphasis on human life, well-being of the humans, and essential public services so that society, economy, and polity remain sustainable. However, you'll find that COVID crisis resulted in terms of disaster in various states, even in the developed countries of the world, as well as in the middle income countries of the world. Costa Rica is an example which talks about lack of capability to produce vaccine. This is the case of whole of Africa, and dependency for the vaccine on other countries is delayed, slowing infection. This has increased the loss of human life, and tourism affected, which is absolutely very important, essential as engine of growth of the economy, adversely due to prolonged restrictions, and other sectors due to contagion effect. So contradiction in the self-reliant policy of Indian government, which has been emphasizing on STI for monopolies, and you'll find that it is not emphasizing on the STI policies for basic need to be addressed of the larger section of society. So STI enclave have been there in Africa, but you'll find that they were not, those capabilities remained confined and not to be used because of existing inequities and vicious cycles. So that is a fundamental limitation. Even if you have some kind of capabilities, scientific capabilities were not being used. Kenya case study of fintech shows that has increased digital intervention of the technologies that has generated some degree of inclusion. So that is the positive sign of the new technologies. So need for global innovation system to overcome emerging global challenges. So the last chapter is emphasizing on not only summarizing what contains the book, but it provides need for global innovation system that is required to be generated to overcome emerging global challenges. So what is important here is that lessons to be learned to reform global institutional architecture that saves humanity rather than save capital, monopoly capital. So therefore, it is urged that we require globally reincarnation of the role of the nation state for capability building, for addressing the concerns of inclusion and sustainability, for dreaming a better world to live in. So globalists and regional chapters have an opportunity for reimagining the role of innovation system to build a new thought processes to lead the stressed world on the post-pandemic times. So this is the task. So this book has worked on frontier areas of knowledge and opened up new areas where large number of scholars are invited to discuss. Finally, we would give credit of this book to the contributors, which are 23 in number, and Rotary is a publisher, which has fast-tracked the publication. It is available both in terms of the paperback as well as hardbound, but South Asia edition at 1,100 is a Indian price, which is very reasonable for the South Asia scholars to access this book. So I think that for this, we have a big thank you for the publication, especially to the Rotterdam team, which has given us this opportunity to circulate the book. With these words, I would like to thank Rajesh for giving the forum this book talk, especially in the Chris Freeman, who has been one of the very leading scholars in terms of bringing out the problems of the global South. And I think this book is, in fact, a tribute to Chris Freeman. Thank you very much for this. So with this, I think we
Thank you very much.
we shall not waste any time to then move on to the presentation by Professor Ruchi Sharma. As expected, Professor Ruchi Sharma will spend 12 to 15 minutes on presentation, and we will have all the presentations first, and then we will have some time for discussions from the floor, as well as if the chapter contributors are here, they can also make few brief remarks about their chapters or about the book. Hand it over to Professor Ruchi.
Thank you so much, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
I would like to share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Screen is not visible.
It might take a moment, but it will come up. Let's be hopeful.
Again.
Dr. Ruchi, I think you have to try again.
Yeah, I think there's some problem with the share here. Is it okay? I think it's just the content on the screen. I can look from the screen and talk. I think that'd be okay.
Okay.
Some
Okay.
papers are there, so I can just go ahead and rather than wasting time. So that's just pointers for me to talk. I think we can go ahead with that. So first of all, I would like to thank Rajesh, the organizers of this very important book discussion, to invite me. And thank you, Renan, for a very kind introduction. And Mr. Lakhwinder Singh has always been, motivating me to be participate in India Leaks and Global Leaks activities. So thank you so much. The book discussion, as I have planned, I will first briefly talk about what the book is all about, and while doing that, I will also incorporate some of my own thoughts and my own take on some of the topics, leading to a discussion on the key takeaways that we can take from this but very important piece of work. And then I've identified certain way forward, which is focusing on essentially the researchers as well as for the policy makers. So to begin with, what we have is a very elaborate, and I must congratulate all the both the writers and all the contributors to a very comprehensive and a very all inclusive collection of these chapters. The book has around 15 chapters, as Professor Singh has earlier mentioned, along with an introduction and a concluding chapter. Now, we've been talking about the background is a once in a century pandemic, which is spread over a couple of years and keep coming back to us with different mutations and causing very destructive waves. All of us as researchers, as academicians, and as humans have witnessed it and also experienced it. And the experiences were, of course, the very immediate one when all of us were locked down in our rooms and were trying to figure out how do we go about our daily business. And apart from that, even after when we've been, officially we say that, okay, now the COVID, pandemic is over, we are still experiencing the consequences of it, whether it is in terms of the impact it has left on the small and medium enterprises, on the overall economies because of the different types of fiscal and the monetary policies that has been followed, and of course at an individual level. Moreover, when we're talking about it, we still remain very unaware about what kind of a long-term implication we are looking into. What may follow after, maybe 4 years, 5 years, having experienced this very traumatic, pandemic. Now, it's very beautiful that the way the book assimilate these thought processes, according to me, and it brings together, these three aspects, and also try to gives us pointer as to how we can, look into the possible long-term implications, but not stopping there, also going forward and figuring out the response that can come from a national, international institutions, governments, and states as to how do we deal with those possible long-term implications. So in terms of assimilation, as the Professor Singh has already pointed out, there are three major parts of the book. Starting with the first part, which looks into the challenges to the innovation system, leading on to the responses, and then bringing in the context specificity. Why? Because these challenges or responses definitely are confined within the existing capabilities and the the institutions which that particular country or a geography will have. So the context specificity has been identified in the last section. And when we start, we talk about the challenges that was presented to the innovation system when we went to the pandemic. And one very important point which stuck with me, and I think we would like to take it from this particular book, as to how the previous policies and the modes of innovation has created certain incapabilities to deal with the specific consequences that we were facing at that point of time. It has been pointed out by the authors in this particular chapter that what we have experienced is this transnational corporate innovation system, which indeed is basically challenging the national innovation system. And because, as Sir was also pointing out earlier, that lead to the concentration of the capital in the intellectual capital, and then leading to the outcome also being concentrated and being available, accessible to certain geographies as such. And then, of course, the role of the global governance and the institution, that is when, what role particularly they played, how they come forward, and then they dealt with that. So the state of the world economy in that sense becomes very important for us to understand at that point of a time, which is in fact, as has been pointed out, is an outcome of the policies that we have been following for the last 40 years. And the state of the economy is already, as has been mentioned, is very unequal, and the inequalities has been pointed out in terms of the per capita income differences amongst the developing and the developed countries, the divergences that exist between in terms of the research and development spending, which is a very basic indicator of how the innovation capabilities are being built in an economy, and then followed by health and the digital infrastructure, which are also very unequally available, as well as the spread among the countries. Now, when that is the way the world is existing before the pandemic hit, very clearly the outcomes of it are also going to be divergent, and the problems that will accrue to the public will also be very different. So in that case, when we look at it, the response, if it has to come, clearly the response to the shock will be depending upon the capabilities that we are talking about. These capabilities when we are looking at is the science, technology, innovation capabilities, the kind of health infrastructure, the kind of a digital infrastructure that is possible. And in that context, what we are looking for is basically the revival strategies. How do we respond, and what are the possible strategies that can be devised in order to respond? So when it comes to the response, clearly the limits to the capacity that has already been talked about in terms of the inequalities that occur because of the inequalities in learning, innovation, and competence building system clearly also contain the response that can come. Like because of this inequalities, the availability of the resources that we have talked about was also very limited. But in terms of response, we find two very important points here. First is clearly an emergence of the integrated innovation system, which the author has talked about as bringing together the key elements of the sectoral innovation system and the national innovation system. In the sectoral innovation system, we are looking at the technology domain, the sector-specific actors and networks, large firms, MSMEs, startups, and setting up the standards regulation within that particular sector. And in the NIS, clearly, as all of you are well aware, is about the education policies, human resources, financial and funding system, national actors, and large corporations also to an extent, and governance and regulation, and a patent system that will be a part of that. Now, in the Indian context, the biotechnology sector, because that was the one sector where the response was expected the most, and the pharmaceutical sector in terms of devising the medicines as well as the vaccine, that how it kind of brings together with the national innovation system, and hence the role of an integrated innovation system, because that is the only way it appears in case of any kind of a shock or a challenge which emerges, which may be an exogenous to the system as well. This integration is much more required. In the same vein, what we find is the next author who talks about the Great Reset. And this is very interesting. This reset essentially, looks through a very proactive role of the state. However, it is not only the state which is holding the responsibility to kind of respond to the challenges at that point of a time. What indeed is look forward is a local engagement, because the solutions are not likely to reach the public if the local are not engaged in that. Moreover, given the characteristics when we are looking of this pandemic, when we are looking forward to science and technological solution, clearly the industry and academia also has to come together. So there we find very interesting examples of these collaborations that have come forward, to the regulatory enablers which has been created through the DBT or ICMR, etc. Moreover, the resource mobilization that has happened by increasing the budgetary support to the ministries, and also drug development, including including the collaboration between the agencies like DBT, DST, and the funding support that has been given to MSMEs, etc. So in that sense, we find that the collaboration and bringing together of these key actors become very, very important. Here again, in terms of when we talk about, so these two papers do talk about the response coming from the economy's point of view, but later we find that if in terms of companies or the firms which we are looking at, so what would be the response, that also depend upon the existing capabilities. It is not independent of the capabilities that are prevalent at that point of time. Now, in the last section, we look at the context specificity. And this is very interesting because here we find the very diverse narratives that has been built across, continents, starting from Germany, Brazil, Costa Rica, India, South Africa, and Kenya. Their personal experiences and their struggles has been highlighted. The common thread among all the chapters, I think I will not go much into, is, of course, the innovation system, and with the mentions of mission-oriented innovation. And data and empirics has also been used as necessitated, that are very elaborate and detailed. Now, moving forward to the key takeaways, we are looking at the plausible pathways, as has been called by the book. We have, three major things: reforming global innovation system, reincarnation of the state, innovation system, inclusion, and sustainability. So first, coming to the reform, this particular takeaway of the reforming global innovation system, here one point has been highlighted with respect to the, IPRs and TRIPS. It's very interesting because the book also has a chapter coming from Germany and another chapter coming from South Africa. And we know very well that the response of both the countries were very different when it came to talking about the TRIPS waiver. So TRIPS waiver was, as all of you know, it was asked by South Africa and India, while in Germany, as the chapter claims, there was a more support for the argument that the global community might not be better off by, by waiving IP rights as such. So what we find is this kind of a divergence response coming from, and this divergence is essentially attributed to the differences in the technological capabilities and the economic realities. Now, this is one point that has been highlighted time and again if we look at the literature which talks about the impact of the trade-related intellectual property rights agreement on the global south. Time and again, it has been pointed out that the existing capabilities, the development, the technology, which are prevalent in the economies at that point of a time, will indeed determine the impact in terms of innovation and technology transfer that will be realized by these economies. So clearly, once again, we are finding this particular divergence and leading to, as has been pointed out in the book, at their own pace and at their own term. That is what the key term would be in terms of finding a solution as such. Then the another point, this is with respect to the global institutes to take cognizance of the techno-economic and political positioning of the South. And this particular point has been there for, I would say, quite some time, because when we went through that major financial crisis in 2008, particularly the global north, that time also there was this entire issue of how IMF etc. would respond. Then we had this entire phase of issues in Europe with respect to Greece as well as in Portugal, and then major stress came on international trade, which was once again questioning the role about the WTO. So I would say that this is in consonance with the discussions that are already going on, that how does global institutions now, when we are looking at a global south which is financially also becoming relatively more prominent, will kind of play out and will give importance to these economies as such. Now, with respect to the reincarnation of the state, clearly the need is to make provisions for the public good and public utilities and to regulate and monitor the behavior of all such actors. Here, I think 2 points which I've seen and in a common narrative that is run throughout the book is essentially to talk about the role of the markets, particularly the neoliberal policies that has led to the challenges in the response which has come through. And we also have a chapter which looks at these divergences and how the response also varies depending upon the capabilities. I think this is also a space where we can find a more research, because in terms of establishing the causality and the relationship between institutions and the response to pandemic. So there's a lot more scope to do in this case. And another very interesting point has come to, would say limelight is that of the low value added track, where we find that the data also shows that when it comes to R&D, statistics, India is not only lacking behind, the Western countries or the developed economies, but also with respect to certain counterparts in Asia. So how do we kind of deal with that? The last one clearly at point is with respect to innovation system. As we have already discussed in detail, it talks about the integrated innovation system and a global innovation system vis-a-vis NIS, RIS, and SIS. Here I would like to think it in terms of more like whether it is a vis-a-vis or whether we are looking for striking a balance as such. Because even if we look at some of the vaccines, that the outcome, maybe the initial research was being conducted on one continent, and the final, industrialization happened in another continent. The actual manufacturing and the production happened in the Asian continent. So in that context, can we simply look at as it is a situation of either or it is more important to look at how do we strike a balance between this? That would be one point I think we should look at. And now coming towards the end, From the researchers' point of view, as I told earlier, that I have also identified certain areas where they can, think about. One is clearly with respect to this value chains, because we have identified is there are vulnerabilities in the global value chain. But having said that, it doesn't mean that we can actually close down, and that kind of an options are very limited. But what would be more important is to actually assess the vulnerability and identify the alternative pathways, so that in case of a future crisis, we should be able to deal with them. And another, again, assessment of the pandemic as an acid test for the pre-existing system, how the response varied with respect to the institution, earlier policies. I think that it actually creates a lot of space for a very good empirical work there. And one very important thing, the book actually talks about how the ICT sector was not very much affected because of the need for the digital technologies to deal with the the lockdowns, etc. But later we have witnessed very massive layoffs in that. Maybe it talks about the excessive capacity that was built into that sector, and or maybe they overhired. And then what happened? I think this is another area where the future research can actually can see, and how maybe when the resources has been concentrated in one sector as a response over a period of a time, how it affects the economy. That's it. Now, two major general observation with which I will close my discussion is that, first of all, while reading the book and while towards ending it, I was actually asking, have the ways of the world really changed? Because when we started with the pandemic, the idea was that, okay, everything will be digital now. But later, when we went back, people did realize the importance of the interaction, and what are the limitations of the digital interactions. Over a period of a time, we have seen, though the companies are still going ahead with the work from home policies, but still at least twice or thrice a week they will still ask the employee to be there. So first of all, have the world really changed? Now, answering this question is very important, because as has also been pointed out, because there are much more bigger challenges that the humanity is facing right now, which is in the form of a climate change. So if we've not been able to if we're still going back to the earlier ways, even in response to such a major I would say the crisis in the life, then clearly where does that behavioral economics, how do we change the behavior, and the research in that direction would be very, very important to see. And clearly the book has given very interesting and important guidelines for the policy maker. What is more important is also how do we figure out they will be formalize these learnings into a policy, because what we have is an excellent academic scholarship. The important point for us would be how do we translate it into something which will be more lasting and will lead to a major way of change that we need to do in order to deal with the current crisis. So with this, I think I will stop. I hope I have made some sense. So that's all.
Thank you very much, Professor Ruchi Sharma, for your comprehensive framing of the book in terms of dissecting what it contains and what are the futuristic areas of research where the attention of the scholars will be drawn or could be drawn. So thank you very much for your presentation. We will come back to you when the question answer session will happen. So now I would like to request Professor Mammo Muchie. Mammo Muchie, are you listening to me? Professor Mammo Muchie. I think he must be sleeping now. So if, yes, I think he has.
Can I unmute?
Yes.
Can you? Yes.
Mammo
No,
Muchie,
I was muted. I was muted.
Kindly
hear me?
do it. You are not visible.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
yes.
Let
me just try.
Right.
Okay.
Yes,
all right. Okay.
So floor is yours, please.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Right.
I'm here. Thank you very much. Yes. This is, let me just say to you, I read the chapters and the contributions. And what is very powerful is the reimagination innovation system in the COVID and post-COVID world. That you start to reimagine innovation system with this crisis. From this crisis, how can we also change the way we think and the way we do our own research and the way we solve problems, and not to create problems, but to solve them? What do we do? I mean, this idea is very, very powerful. It's knowledge imagination that you have. Even the title itself is very, very good, to be honest with you. And you summarized it nicely also, all the chapters. Also in the introduction you wrote, all of you, it's very nicely summarized, everything you have done. So I'm genuinely very happy, but I just want to, I thought the best thing, instead of going through all these chapters and repeating them again, the most important thing is, if we are reimagining, what are the kind of things and the kind of variables and others that we need to include and exclude and so on. We need to actually identify those things very well, you know, to create a new way by which we can do the knowledge direction to move across and for everyone to understand it. That's what I was just thinking. And my suggestion we need to re-innovate innovation. We need to redevelop development. We need to do a whole new conceptual framing, with your reimagination, ideas, and then new retheorization of all these areas and fields. You remember, like the economics liberal economics that we have been going through, and it's still dominant, as you rightly put it also in some of you, that the market, the commercials, the profit gaining, individuals gaining, becoming rich, others becoming poor, inequality spreading, poverty remaining, unemployment rising. All these situations happening is not going to, we need to actually, you know, rethink current uneconomics, liberal economics. We have to do that. How do we create a unified wealth anchored innovation and an original sustainable novel development theory to save both humans and nature together? How do we do that is the most interesting. How can we learn how to act, all right, locally very well, and at the same time think globally, to make sure that we interlink them very well? And how do we create a new theory, conceptual frame from this reimagination? What I want to say to you is that from this important work, post-COVID world, how we created from the current COVID distractions to a post-COVID construction. How do we move on into that world is a fascinating area, and what you opened up is excellent. And I think it's a very, very good book. That all the chapters, when you read them, there's so many good ideas that have come. And what I want is also that we move on now to COVID and post-COVID, make it even more general. You know, the climate change, all these things we need to address all the challenges, all the problems, the poverty, the inequality, right? All people, different countries fighting wars, all these things. We need a new innovation approach to actually address this. This current pandemic should provide not the opportunity to address the research gaps that exist for the world to be in this situation, when there should have been anticipatory and predictive knowledge to find advanced solutions to prevent, rather than now running all over the world to find vaccines to cure endemics, epidemics, pandemics created by the economic system that devalues associational human relations, health relations, all right, and values individualistic and self-interested, you see, a driven world, pricing everything, valuing nothing. This kind of world is what we are now having. So what I like you to do is I want to provoke you, all of you have contributed these chapters to actually go beyond it now and advance from this excellent thing you started to actually move on further and make sure that we make sure we create a world with no poverty, with no health hazards for the whole. I mean, we can do it. We're all humanity in one world community. By thinking globally, even change the whole world, create a new world. And I think imagination, a new knowledge, wisdom is what we need. And I just want to say to all of you, I appreciate you for creating this interesting book, but I want to make sure that we advance even further and do this re-innovation thinking much. I don't want to say more. I just want to provoke you with this. And I hope all the chapter contributors will now say, we're going to continue to write more, do more research, and come out with, with the speed of light square. We need to do new ways by which
I think Professor Mammo's audio is
we save the world, the health world, the health of everyone is very important. And we also need to value the indigenous knowledge, not drugs and so on. So excavate, revive over many, many years. And how do we also think like that is what we discuss it like this. So the great idea of reimagining innovation system in this COVID and post-COVID world. Let's make it a better world, or all humanity in one world, community world. All right, with your Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. You should go for that, and don't devalue yourselves. Value everyone, and then let's not create war. Let's not create all this nonsense. And I think the innovation system idea must be changed also to make sure that we can actually address it in this way. How do we change it also? How do we reconceptualize it, reframe it, and re-theorize it is very, very important. At the moment, it's very, it's not good. You have sectoral, regional, all these crazy things you have. This doesn't help us, to be honest with you. But the reimagination helps us. A new knowledge idea helps us. So that's my suggestion. And I think it's better I give this, because that's what you inspired me to think about this. Because of this, you provoked me, and then I'm provoking you back. All right. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Mammo Muchie. You have been a great friend of the editors of the book as well as of the contributors. You are always philosophical, but today's your thought-provoking kind of ideas will help the scholars to, reimagine the way the global innovation system is working, and inequities, poverty, and divisions, wars are being created. And I think that your idea of one nation is very, very important to understand. But I think that my suggestion here will be, as you have been doing it, that all the regional leagues have an opportunity to start from this book onward to generate the ideas, develop the literature, reimagining innovation systems.
Yes.
So, and the efforts of everyone is required. So your direction in this way is very helpful, that the other leagues should learn a lesson to develop the ideas, and should not stop here, but reimagining how future world we should build, and how better future world we can build. That is the idea in the book which need to be carried forward, and your direction in this way, your philosophical thought in this way are really very helpful.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And we will come back to you with some of the questions, but now
Thank you.
we have a very firebrand speaker,
Thank you, sir.
Professor Papia Singh Gupta. She's from Jawaharlal University. We have been, listening to her in earlier discussions, but I think that the book discussion, especially, she has been working very hard to, make her presentation on the book. So now I do not waste much time to invite you and hand over the mic to you. Please, please speak for 15 minutes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Lakhwinder Singh. And I would really like to thank, Global Lex as well as India Lex. Apart from Professor Lakhwinder Singh and KJ and, Professor Mammo Muchie, I'm seeing him after quite some time. So, and all, Ruchi, as well as, Renan for, those introductions. But, before I go to the book review, I would just like to, so congratulations to all the both the editors and the contributors. But before anything, before going directly to the book, just one, just taking 2 minutes about, one's experience with Global Lex and the, the India Lex. I think, it is very, very imperative to talk about, the association of Global Lex and the regional legs, because, you have been able to, continue a kind of a conversation even during the COVID, prior to the COVID, and post the COVID. And I think that is something I would really like to congratulate each and every person involved. And, because, I interact more with Professor Singh and KJ and others, but I have to tell you that this is one association where, I have been now, involved for the past 8-10 years. And it is not about, just an association with, a common objective, but certain very human touch, which are so critical for any, academic association, because in academia, at times we just get embroiled with, discreteness and, academic writing and academic language. I think the mutualities, the friendships, the acknowledgements, the inter and the intra-association relationship of the members of Global Lex as well as the regional legs is something I have never witnessed and experienced in other associations. So I really want to congratulate on that to everybody. Oh, okay. Now coming to the book, I have certain very positive reviews as well as my critical comments. So I will first start with the good things. First thing is it's a very, very important contribution. Thinking about reimagining and reimagination is very critical at this point. And I think if we do not and enter into this venture of reimagining, we will again fall into the same path which we should have not followed. And one thing I would just like to say that the state response to this particular pandemic, that is the COVID-19 pandemic, which happened nearly 100 years after the Spanish flu, has actually not changed. Means I really did not see a major change in it. It was same kind of a response of social distancing, of being just restricting lockdowns, the same kind of mask. Of course, the designs have changed. So I think at times I was questioning myself while working on several projects of British Academy on COVID-19, that have we really learned our lessons, or are we just has the state not learned and has the people not learned? So I think that is an important conversation that which this particular book, of course, focuses on innovation systems. And I found that the book divided into 3 parts. Of course, for me, the part 3, the critical perspectives of innovation policy in the context of COVID-19, which comprises 7 chapters, was something I actually started reading first after the introduction, and went out, from the back to the forth to part 1, and then to part 2. So I started from the back of the book after the introduction. I would like to say that, certain things which I think, one has to laud this particular work is one, if in one sentence or in one word, I can say is the diversity. It is a huge cross-cultural, cross-country study. Not only, and I would not use the term global south. I think that is again, falling into the same kind of categorization given to us by the Western nations. So the countries of Africa, South America, as well as, Asia and Southeast Asia. I think all these countries, the kind of scholars who have involved and studied it at a national level. And here, precisely, I would like to mention that the work is at a national level. It is normally talking about, these different countries and their response, the state's response to the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, which, stormed the earth, I would say, and not just countries, but the earth, in 2020. Some of the important things I think which the work, talks about is, I think, the preface is very important because it actually, sets the ball rolling, as to say, where, the editors start with the premise of two major strategies adopted by most nation states globally. And that is, one is invigorating healthcare systems, along with, coming up, of vaccines and controls and, social distancing, masks, and, this kind of a thing. And also, so these, the health system and, the state response. And I think, one of the things that, the preface says is that how, the response of the COVID-19, and, when I read it, most of the chapters, the 15 chapters, actually talk from a very national perspective, apart from Sujit Bhattacharya's chapter, which actually is a case study of two corporates, involved in vaccine making. So for me, I would divide, COVID response into four parts. First, the international, the national or the state, the community, and the individual initiatives. And I think the book essentially talks about, the state or the national initiatives and the need for a global innovation system. At the same time, it talks about, healthcare provisions, again, another area which I'm really, becoming more and more interested in. And it talks about innovation and development and global innovation systems. And I'm not going to go into, means I have done the part 1, 2, 3 kind of a review, but I'm not going to go into that particular, thing of each chapter and how it talks about. I was like, thinking about how we can move forward. Of course, this book is exceptionally good, and it has come at a time when I think it has set a lot of conversations and discussions, and it, they were just when I was reading, I was just getting, more and more bombarded with, this kind of a feeling that what can be done. Also, given the kind of cross-cultural and the cross-state and the cross-country study, I think there is a lot of need to also maybe one chapter seeping into the other. So the flow of the book really is another thing which I found it very very good. And with Lundvall's chapter on how the COVID actually led to technological monopolies on one hand, and the innovation system has not seeped down to issues of environmental and climate change, education, and health. I think that is also a very important chapter, and it makes a very important chapter as chapter 1, just after the innovation, after the introduction to the book. There are 5, 6 points which I think are important to flag out here. One is, for me, innovation, the term innovation, actually, the underlying premise of, innovation is inclusiveness. And, here, I know that, most of the chapters talk about inclusion, and inclusion being a very important thing. But there is something, where I found that in the preface, one particular distinction being made, between scholars of innovation systems and inclusive innovation systems. And I think, I'm really not very happy with this distinction, because I would rather say that innovation must be inclusive. Innovation is not only, for the elite or for the, at the national level, which will not percolate down. The very underlining factor of, innovation is that, it has to come down, or it can actually, innovation is not always in the, from the top to the bottom, but often innovation takes place at the grassroots level. And during my study, something similar I experienced, that, we were talking about public policies, and we were talking about lockdowns, and, which was the very, very instinctive and very impulsive kind of the response to the COVID. But I would say that, the lockdown would have been more inclusive had the state been, responsive and facilitated, different kind of workers, laborers, migrants, movement, and, then went into lockdown. So the notion of, a national lockdown within, just a couple of hours, and this was across countries. It was like a ripple effect across countries, a very homogeneous kind of a, response, that is lockdown. I think, the countries, at least, countries which we called as, of countries of Asia, Africa, and, North, South America, as well as even the northern countries, so to say. I think this was done just keeping in mind, this was a very impulsive way of, handling the COVID pandemic. First, they were not accepting that there is a pandemic, and then suddenly lockdown, where you do not, the priority is you're only thinking about a particular class of people and not the majority of the population, which in such countries actually live below poverty line. We have in all these countries, from Costa Rica to, South Africa to Germany, you have migrants, you have immigrants who are moving from state to state, or, region to region. And you cannot just declare a lockdown and say that, within 4 hours, all the borders are sealed and every transport is stopped. So I think, the state responses have not at all been inclusive. Most of the responses have been, doing a lip service to, the poor and, the marginalized. And that is one of the things I really think, that is why, innovation must be inclusive. And for me, innovation also includes two kinds of inclusion. One inclusion is to, when you just do a lip service and, bring others into your fold, right? So, you have the presence of the other, but not effective presence and participation, what I call as inclusion as being treated, where the communities and the individuals, the indigenous population is treated as equals. And I think in most of the innovation studies, what is happening is inclusion is being taken as, bringing others into the fold. And while it is not actually, percolating down to something like inclusion as voice and, innovation or inclusive innovation, wherein participation as equal is very, very important. And this has actually led to somehow a very huge divide between the scientific community on the other hand, the state, the market, which I think is as political as any other, institution. It is full of its own hierarchies. It's not an apolitical neutral space. It is very much a political space with all its hierarchies and division. So that is one of the first points about, talking about inclusion and innovation, and both the things as, coming together. As one cannot think of innovation without inclusion. And maybe, in inclusion, one has to think about innovation. And innovation, I think, if one goes back to the Chris Redmond's work on development, actually talks about most of the, innovation at times actually comes from scarcity or scarce resources, and it's a response to scarcity. And these innovations come from much more from the local and the ground level, rather than people sitting who are making policymakers who are pretty distant from what is actually happening in the ground. The second thing I would like to talk about, and I think we can actually do maybe another round of work, Professor Singh, where we can bring in, also, works, as even Professor Mammo Muchie said, and you responded, the regional aspects, and, some kind of more local studies, which will not only be learning from the OECD countries, but, learning and, initiating, if again, a kind of South-South dialogue. on innovation, rather than only a global north, global south kind of a dialogue. The second thing I think, in this particular work, which there are two, of course, all the authors, in fact, I think apart from two, hint at, the restrictive, what I call this, the political, missing the political. And what do I mean by it? So the book does hint on the role of political leadership. The chapter on Germany by, Walls, he talks about it, need for greater state response and investment in public health, but somehow, I think, it falls a little bit short of the critical lens, because if one sees at, public expenditure on healthcare, specifically public healthcare, all the countries we have studying apart from, in the book, apart from Germany, it spends less than 2%. And I'm talking about this data from Our World in Maps, and this is 2019 data. If you see that, there is a slight increase in public, healthcare between the COVID times, that is 2020, between 2020 March and 2022. But after the post-COVID time, what we see is that again there is a slump. So so what has happened is, when you have it's like a patchwork. So when you have a problem, just patch it up, and you don't have to actually maybe reconstruct the road, but just, do some kind of patchwork. And I think that attitude has to be challenged by, innovation studies scholars, that it cannot be a patchwork. If you have to be well aware and well positioned to face another such pandemic or any other disaster in the future, one needs to be more cautious and more prepared. And I think that COVID or pandemic preparedness is now, something which is just talked about by the state in certain, global forums, but it does not actually is coming down. Another thing I would like to say is, I think the third point I would like to say is how there has been a rise of authoritarianism in the aftermath of the pandemic, and how the pandemic has been actually used to curtail civil liberties and rights, as at the same time during the pandemic, the state actually penetrated into sectors and into places which were earlier not, under the state, so to say. But even in the post-COVID-19 pandemic, those negative aspects of curtailing civil liberties and othering of minorities, of a specific kind of attack on individual rights and freedom, I think that has not actually, the state has not gone back to the pre-COVID time of giving those back to its citizens. While the negative thing of penetrating into into the, what I say, the individual private or the privacy sector, those kind of things, the state penetration has not been done. So the negatives which happened during the pandemic, the kind of pandemic was also used as a veil to pass certain very, very draconian laws. And those laws have not gone back because the pandemic is over. So, I think that is another very important, important thing which, this pandemic has taught us. And, more research on this will really be great. The third thing, which I called as data manufacturing and innovation. During the COVID, one could see, if you see the Johns Hopkins data, then you see the World Health Organization data and the national state data, you will see that there's a wide gap. And, how the states are just, competing to show to each other that, we are actually responding better. And in that zeal of showing each other, the sufferers have been the people. So there has been a kind of a ploy to manufacture data, to show that your policies have been very, very successful. And I'm not saying that, this is all the task of innovation scholars, because, we can only do this much. And, the political field has to, do certain things. But I think, this is an important, important area which needs focus. The fourth one is about increasing income inequalities. And, some of the chapters, in fact, 3 chapters actually talked about the slump in per capita income and also the budget allocation of healthcare. And here I would just like to make one distinction between, relative allocation of, budget, into public healthcare and, overall budget. And why this particular distinction is very important, because if you see at the budget, let's compare 2014 or 2019 to 2022 in terms of amount. There is a slight rise in public sector, investment by the state. But if you see relatively to the percentage relation to the budget allocation, it has actually not even raised. In India, it has not even gone up from 1.6 to 1.8. So, this is a very important distinction, because the state has been, having this narrative that we are investing a lot on healthcare, which it truly has not, because one is just talking about investment in healthcare and the other is about accessibility when people definitely need those healthcare during the time of a pandemic. I think the third link and the fourth, and I'll just take 2 more minutes, to wrap this up. One thing which I missed in the book, and I think, that would have really, really made it and strengthened it, and we have not lost it in many ways, but, we can always go ahead and, there can be more work, is the role of media. I think, none of the chapters actually talked about the role of national and the local media. And because, and this is, coming from my work, where I saw that, when the pandemic, we were talking about vaccination, we were talking about, sanitation, washing hands and masking. This kind of media, the media was actually not translating, those kind of precautionary measures, in different languages. So information was not being given to a lot of linguistic minority communities, to indigenous communities, who in India, for example, and I've done this study of US, Brazil, and India, a developed country, and 2 developing countries, the BRICS nation, that is Brazil and India. In all the 3 countries, I see a same kind of response. The language of COVID instruction in US was only English for about a month, and then they shifted to English and Mandarin. In India, at the national level, it was only English, Hindi. In Brazil, it was only Portuguese, and none of these information was given in indigenous language. It took a very long time for them. And therefore, one could have actually, utilized the local radio in, minority, tongue languages and, provided for this. So any kind of critical information must reach the masses. And if they cannot understand, the language, and this also happened in India in different states, they were only telecasting and, repeating these information only in their major languages. So Marathi and Hindi in, Maharashtra, Bengali in West Bengal. But you have so many people who are moving who do not actually understand that particular language. So there has been that dearth, and that is why the number of Hispanics, Latinos killed due to the caseload of COVID in USA as well as in Brazil and India was massive compared to, let's say, people, the working class population, and here specifically certain sectors of working class who had the privileges of staying indoors and understanding information. And I would just like to say another thing was, fake news, digital divide, of course, and the lack of, attention being given to education. I think it's very, very important that when we talk about, because digitalization happened and began being celebrated, as well as there has been a lot of scholarship on digital divide. But what did not actually, was not focused was that in these countries where we are living, not everybody has a smartphone. They do not have the money to buy data packs, so that that affected education and educational capabilities. And I think had and there were innovations at that kind of a sector, while the state did not respond to this kind of, they just talked about certain websites and certain forums of digital education. They did not even understand. Like, I'll just end with one of the examples in my own university, which is considered an elite public university. Okay, I'm just stopping then. If
yes.
I have
Okay,
all right. Okay, I think so these are some of the areas I thought that one can continue the debate of of innovation and reimagining and rethinking of innovation system. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Papia, for bringing out pertinent issues which I think need reconsideration, and the future work, especially the asymmetric information as well as the sustainability of the healthcare system, which was emphasized during the COVID period. But, sustainability is a fundamental problem. So I think that we are in September 2021, we are going to organize IndiaLex conference, Global X IndiaLex conference in Bhubaneswar, where I think that the issues which we are expected to take forward will happen over there, larger amount of discussion. But I'm grateful that you have looked into some of the neglected aspects which need to be covered. That's why the Mammo Muchie has and Professor Ruchi Sharma has argued that we require a further work. This is the base work done during that particular period of time. What we require is that we have to take it further, but those all the regional X should be active in terms of involving with Global-X and generate such kind of volumes which deal with the other aspects which we have not been able to do that. Already the book asked for a short chapters, and then it is 304 pages. So if we could have included more number of chapters, that might have been difficult to find even the publisher. So that is the kind of limitations in which we have worked. But thank you very much bringing out some pertinent issues which are especially required to be taken up in terms of further research. And I think the talk is successful if we are able to have some takeaways that can be examined further. So now I think floor is open for discussion. We can have pointed questions to the presenters, and maybe some comments or brief suggestions which can occur. And I think who is now Stephen, Professor Stephen is going to speak, or anybody else? Professor Stephen, okay.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yes, I think that it looks a very valuable edited collection. I think that the question about inclusion, and it brings to mind the middle up down concept that came out of Japanese knowledge management, a couple of decades ago, that it's not enough to have brilliant innovation policies set out in government reports. It's what happens on the ground, and what happens on the ground is very much conditional on the particular capacities that are available. So I think the points that have been made about inclusion are critical, and I think for me that is an interesting question, having spent most of the last decade involved in a particular policy development in a particular political party. I've now left because I don't think those policies will be implemented. I think that's perhaps one of the critical areas that perhaps we as an academy can engage with. I mean, it's fine to have our nice academic discussions, but I think what's been emphasised here today is the need to really learn both from the grassroots experience, but also to engage the full spectrum of levels. So I look forward to actually acquiring my own copy of the book and working through it. So thank you very much for arranging this introduction to the work.
Thank you very much. I think that Papia may respond first. So anyone who is willing to respond, Ruchi or Papia Sen Gupta?
I think it's like, what Professor Stephen is saying. I think, I've already, flagged that off. And I do agree that, there has been, there is a lot of performativity about knowledge management by the nations, or maybe just, the political states. But that knowledge management, and I'm not very happy with the term management, I think it has to be knowledge engagement. It does not come down. So what happens is, you have these very isolated sectors, and, the book does talk about coordination and cooperation among stakeholders. But again, stakeholders can be, the political stakeholders, but what about the public? What about the people? So all these innovations, I feel, whom are you making them for? Are they for profit and, getting embroiled into copyright issues, and, then, a monopoly becomes monopolized by some kind of a corporate, company? Or are you actually making, them for the people to use, and, specifically in matters of healthcare? Means the issue is, but, this is a very, very difficult question, because what is happening is, public investment in healthcare is really coming down. It's more about private insurances. And, knowledge has become something very elitist. You just talk about it only as if knowledge is only something that is, again, what is knowledge, what is science? Again, I've been working on that. It's so much, concentrated on a particular kind of a very, very Eurocentric definition of what is knowledge, what is science. And also this kind of a presumed understanding, and I've been critiquing even the, United Nations definition on scientific innovation, that there is this presumption that knowledge flows from north to south. And, the global north is more innovative than the global south, while, the truth, and this is, from data on, the innovation indexes and the innovation report, which comes annually, is that, the innovative countries, like, for example, in the globe, it's Switzerland, right? But the per capita income is 250 times more than, the per capita income of, a country of South America or South Asia or Southeast Asia. So I think what is somehow missing is that, there is a lot of talk at the top, but, you don't see them, in the ground. Nothing comes down. And that is why, while I was reading the book, I think I really provocative, and I might have been a little bit harsh in my criticism, that, the grassroots is missing. Because I saw a lot of, because I was doing my fieldwork during the COVID. So my fieldwork was actually from May 2021 till December 2022. And I visited, even in those very pathetic conditions, different villages, different, slums in Delhi. And when, the lockdown went over, I actually was visiting other places. And I actually, I came across innovation of, which was done by communities, which were, innovations in slums. Because how do you expect, 7 people living in a 100 feet by 100 feet house to maintain social distancing? And, those kind of things. And that's why I think, there is a need to think about innovation also from that level. And I really, I'm happy that, you talked about, engagement of all spectrums of level, because that is what I found was missing when the states responded, to the pandemic. Thank you.
Yeah. Ruchi, you can have a response. Brief.
I think what I will agree with Papia, as she has pointed out, that we need to have that understanding of the, what is the requirement at the ground. But one point here is like, I think, which will also kind of like she said, that it also depends. For instance, if you look at the most monopolized and the IP related innovations, then the market demand is already defined, and that is where because it will lead to the profit, and the companies are already looking into the and getting the feedback from the consumer, and kind of moving towards it. But it does depend upon the nature and the kind of a product that we are looking at. When we're talking about education, when we're talking about the health sector, then clearly the role of the state, and in terms of understanding innovation much beyond the products, is much required. So that will be on my end.
Thank you. Now we have 2 very important interventions. One is by Rajesh.
Sorry.
Rajesh, and then we have Dexiso from South Africa.
Ethiopia.
Are we still in
right.
Sorry, are we still in the question hour session? Because I had a question.
Yes, yes, we are having question, but Rajesh is going to ask question, and then Dexiso, and then you.
No, Professor Lakhwinder, please.
Ask to write your question also.
Veena can proceed with the question. I prefer to ask at the end. No worries.
Okay, okay. So
Okay.
So Veena, you speak in place of Rajesh, and
Okay.
then we will have Dexiso.
Okay, thank you so much for giving. And I'm Veena Kulkarni, and I am here at Arkansas State University. So it's early morning, not that early morning for us here. I actually, in this reimagining thing, I was just thinking more like dovetailing what Papia said, and on more micro level, what has been seen in the education sector, research now, which is coming out of students who were, in school and grade school and even in college during the COVID years. There seems to be, at least in the US context, there seems to be like a permanent kind of a loss of learning. And there have been, so there is a lot of thinking and rethinking of how to compensate for that period when and especially that happened when, for students who are like, in their young adults and adolescents, and which is the key, which is a very a crucial part of their in their life cycle, about not just, so both it is academic and non-academic, in the sense that academic, of course, learning, but non-academic in the sense learning social skills, wanting to be with peers and interactions. And now research is showing that that people are having classrooms are facing more and more behavioral issues with students like that, in addition to the loss of learning that has happened. So I think there's some reimagining and innovation there may be required to kind of mitigate that loss, which that's my question. Sorry, thank you.
Okay, can we take all the questions, and then the response will be at the end? So Dexiso, would you like to say, because you have noted 4 questions in the discussion. So if you will yourself state those questions, that will help us to understand better. Yes, floor is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes. You are muted. You are muted yourself. Unmute, please. Yes, now you can speak.
Now audible, huh? Okay, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Dexiso Guye. I'm from Ethiopia, East Africa. I've been in India since 2016. I have attended my MA in economics at Punjab University, Patiala, and now I'm pursuing my PhD also in the same field in economics in the same university. I would like to express my thanks and gratitude to my Professor Lakhwinder Singh. He is my teacher and a mentor also in Punjab University, Patiala. I'm so proud to get such a outstanding opportunity with such outstanding and world-class scholars. I want to say some introductory part on the book Reimagining Innovation System in the COVID and post-COVID world. As we know, by the time when COVID pandemic was happened, we are in shock. It is a new pandemic. There are a lot of challenges, as we know, very irritation, very challenging, especially mental stress. There is no physical touch. Even using public transportation is impossible by the time, and also misplaced of employees from company. There is a lot of crisis by the time. So reimagining that history, even that trend by itself is very difficult at the moment. So the book is very outstanding. It is very helpful for the future. By saying this as introductory on this book, I have some sort of questions for those scholars. Number one is how can policies drive innovation and the equity after COVID or post-COVID. My second question is, in short, what type of strategies or which strategies we have to use to promote inclusive growth after the pandemic? The next question is, how does digitalization impact labor markets, and how can economics adapt that digitalization of labor markets? And my final or last question was about collaboration efforts that support sustainable economic growth. So I need some brief recommendation or some brief response on this question. Thanks so much.
So next we have a round of questions from Professor Nalini.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Hope I am audible.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes, sir. So I had just one question. This is related to Africa. This was one of the most neglected region in the world during COVID-19. In terms of during COVID-19, getting the access of medicine, and also after the end of the pandemic, getting the vaccine. So, but still South Africa and India both have filed an application in WTO for the access for COVID-19 vaccine. And this was also granted by WTO. But still, the vaccination program is not proper in South Africa. One of your chapter, I think, when you have discussed about this book, you have also discussed about Africa. So I just wanted to know whether this aspect has been included as a part of the book or not.
Yes, please. Any other question? I think Rajesh is still, he has to speak.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Lakhwinder Singh. That was a great discussion, and I could see that even after several reviews, the interest on this book has not diminished. I'm sure it is because of the quality of the book and also the importance of the topic that it has handled. It is how the system, the national innovation systems are being reimagined or should be reimagined in the post-COVID war-like scenario. So congratulations to the panel. I have a question and a minor comment. While just going through the book, I was curious whether it says anything about policy coordination, what it has to say about policy coordination, especially with reference to the global south, the developing part of the world. We know that recent studies have come up with ideas how deficiencies in policy coordination contribute to failure in certain countries, and how countries with more centralized political regimes, that is Northern European countries where centralized political regimes, unitary systems exist, they have performed better in coordinating policies with respect to COVID management than those countries with the more stronger federal systems like India and several southern countries. I could see that some of the authors, Jeffrey and Sujit Bhattacharya and Glenda Cruz, some of them have mentioned about the importance of policy coordination. Just mentioning, I find maybe a chapter on this topic could have added value to the book. I am keen in knowing what the panel thinks about this, because essentially inadequacy in policy coordination in global south also point to the fact that the developing countries, most developing countries do not have innovation policies, because innovation policies are essentially cross-cutting policies, cutting across sectoral systems. So those countries with strong innovation policies have performed better in coordinating policies related to COVID management. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
I think now Sujit Bhattacharya will ask some question. Sujit Bhattacharya.
I have not asked a question. I have not asked a question, but no, I was. It is interesting to see the different ways the book has been read in the last session also, and this session also. And what I would echo with Professor Lakhwinder Singh is that we have in this interesting India Leaks conference. Finally, we have managed to get that going, and it will be a very interesting conference. And we have a big startup hub there also, and we are expecting all of you who are connected will make it there. And that the points which you have raised, that can be an interesting ways in which it can be. And with Professor Lakhwinder Singh, Joseph, and all, I think we will have at least 2 books now. We have to increase our quantum because 1 book will not be suffice to address all these challenges. And so, and Professor Mammo Muchie is always there guiding us all the time, our brother and mentor. So we go ahead. So that is what it is. So I just told Professor Lakhwinder that enjoying the comments from all of the scholarly discourse from you all. So have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So Renan is going to speak.
Yes. No, I also have one last question. Should I bring it now as well?
Right.
Yes.
I think my question goes a little bit into towards the provocation of Professor Mammo Muchie. Shouldn't we perhaps be thinking, it's more a provocation also, but a question, shouldn't we also be thinking about perhaps a much deeper and trying to erase any sort of like perhaps dogmas that might have on the topic, but talk very deeply about like ownership when it comes to innovation? First of all, because I think the conversation most of the times stay a lot in the field of IPRs, but the innovation process is much more complex than it, right? So when we think about like a very big and large corporations, you know, they play a very strong role. Also, their tested knowledge is not translated into IPRs or TRIPS, right? It's another part of the innovation process which is there, and still they have it, you know, they keep it. And when you think about even other actors that support innovation system, when you think about financial systems or bank concentration in many countries that have been increasing, you know, the topic ownership becomes for me so central and so detrimental on the next steps of where innovation is heading to. And even more when we think like on, for example, Professor Lundvall article when he mentions about the technological monopolies, you know, when he's mentioning about the big techs, you know, the size of the influence, perhaps, I don't know, it's a size of international influence and detachment from any sort of like international or national regulation system seems, I don't know, unprecedented perhaps in our history, you know. So yeah, I think it's a question, it's like a provocation. Should we be thinking in more deeper and radical terms about ownership?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have collected enough number of questions. And now I would like to give the floor to each one of the panelists to briefly, respond to the questions. So first, Ruchi, then Papia Gupta, and last word from Mammo Muchie.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much
for see very interesting questions that we have received. So I'll very briefly talk about the questions which has come from Dexiso. He talks about the kind of policies that are required, but when we look at the book does talk about the need for the reimagination. And in that reimagination, we look at the role of the state intervention, as well as the need for the restructuring of the global institutions. Now, learning from the existing policies that we have, which are broadly, when you look at it, we'll talk about maybe some kind of an R&D incentive or maybe an IPR, as Renan was saying, that has been created to kind of incentivize innovation. what is most important is to once again focus on the context specificity of the technology sector, like whether these policies are relevant for them or not, because we've realized that as an IPR that might be relevant for certain sectors, maybe in pharma or or maybe in semiconductor, but may not be for the others. Now, having said that, this identifying the specificity with respect to the technology, and then because the question actually asked about how do we address the economic disparities from the innovation structure. Again, then if we are, the focus is in innovation or the removal of economic disparity, that needs that kind of a clarity would also be required, because to think about a policy to answer all the problems would be asking too much from that particular policy design. So I think it is very important also to know and understand what is it that we are trying to achieve through that policy design, and accordingly frame that. And that of course we have already discussed about certain points about how to keep inclusiveness, accessibility, availability of the innovation, and to ensure that they are available across the different stratas of the society. So that's my one point to the different questions he has asked. With respect to policy coordination, like as Rajesh sir asked, it's clearly there in the book we have seen there are pointers toward it, like when we look at the chapter by Professor Sujit, who actually brings together how different organizations and institutions they came together to find a solution, whether they were from industry, large companies, small and medium enterprises, and what happened when it came to making those PPEs as well as those particularly the kits that was required for the testing. So we have the pointers towards the policy coordination, but not a specific chapter. I think that was for the editors to kind of take a call, like but clearly that thread is definitely there among all the three major policy implications that has been given in the towards the end. And that yes, I would agree with Renan also that we need to look into this ownership related aspects, because ultimately by the end of the day, when we're looking at it, there will be resources that will be spent on the innovation, right? And but the ownership again, when we are thinking from a point of view of property or from a firm point of view, when we are looking at innovations coming from community, how they get channelized, then clearly a deeper understanding of that would be must. So I will stop here, and I think
Thanks everyone for those questions, and I think I'll just I'll take them, I'll just club them together. So there are 4 points. Coming firstly to Veena's question on how to compensate the young adults, and the lack of social skill, which has which has led to neurological and behavioral aspects of among students, specifically among students. I think, I'll just give you an example of what, we have started doing, and we do not have, like our university has been always targeted. So we do not really are getting state funds, and enough fund for the infrastructure. But, we just thought rather than sitting idle, let's just do something. So, 2 things we have started is a faculty student non-teaching staff collision. What we are doing there is, we do not have any academic discussion there. We just bring in even the, the students who have already passed out of the MA. If they are available, they also come. So we all meet together, in a very non-academic, not in the classroom. So we meet in the grounds, and, we just have a discussion about how, the COVID impacted, because it also led to a lot of psychological issues among people, specifically among young adults, and it will have a very long-term impact. So, it's more about conversation, about a collective conversation where you share. And I think that is that is also very innovative, because, when we are sharing, when knowing that, others have suffered, from a very distance is very different than when you share your personal stories with them. And I think that is that has helped. Specifically, among, people coming from very marginalized and disadvantaged groups, as well as people coming from very elite groups, because they found themselves as suddenly being very isolated. So I think that is one of the things we have done, but it's at a very individual kind of a level. Coming to Keso's question, I think, of course, Ruchi has addressed some of it, but I think what we need is an economic policy which is based less on profit or, and more on a politics of care. I think it's very, very fundamental. It might sound very idealistic, very philosophical, but there are feminist lenses and feminist economic approaches which focus on care as a very basis, because it also talks about the backlash if you do not invest, or if you're not actually taking care, and the only focus is profit. Very soon it's going to have a backlash on the economy of any state, whether there is a disaster or not. So, I think that particular approach, a very feminist intersectional approach, which talks about care, a theoretical perspective of care. I would also like to talk about, the question of ownership, which, Renan brought in. And I think, even in my, some of my work I've been talking about, it's not just about copyrights and IPRs. And a lot of times, certain innovation, techniques, are actually suddenly bought by the private corporation. And I think, there we really require state intervention. And another perspective of this ownership is what I call community ownership of innovation. This community ownership of innovation might be more specifically, a particular innovation which stays in the community. And even if, they are, passing it on to, and if it is, of course, if it's a very good innovation, and pass it on to some other institutions, but not to private corporations, definitely not to private corporations, because then, they lose their own ownership on that particular, knowledge. So, a lot of indigenous knowledge and, all those things, so you do not actually have the ownership, even though you generated it, because, somebody else bought it. And, now they are free to do it. And on the question of coordination, what I found, Rajesh, is not only 3, but, all the chapters, cutting across all the chapters, they talk about, policy coordination. The issue of policy, of course, it doesn't have one particular chapter on it, because I think it's also very important that, all the chapters talking about it, maybe, it could have highlighted on a theoretical ground of, a federal country or a country. But I think that was, so policy coordination is definitely there in all the chapters, all of them. In fact, from Costa Rica's chapter on talking about reactivation policy to Dinesh Abrol's paradoxes of the STI policy in India, and also Glenda Cruz's chapter on South Africa, which talks about collision-centered inclusive development and integration of various sectors. And another very interesting thing which I found was the chapter on Kenya, which talks about digital technology and inclusive digital systems. So there is this, I think there is a simmering, need about policy coordination. Definitely, there is not one chapter, but I think that is very much present in the book. But yeah, I mean, possibly one chapter would have, maybe given more direction, if you say so. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Professor Mammo Muchie?
Yes. Can you hear me? Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
The questions, all the questions are very interesting. I like one of the questions: how can collaborative effort between governments, business, and other stakeholders create
Mammo, you are not audible.
Even in the book.
Yes.
Can you hear
fine.
me?
Good.
Hello?
Yes. Hello.
Oh.
Yes,
Can
we
you hear
can
me?
listen to you speak. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. Yes. Sorry. Sometimes the network is a bit complex. It's important. This also on the stakeholders. How do they behave? Do they cooperate, or do they collaborate, or do they compete? Even China, and there's in the book the China monopoly side is also mentioned, if you remember. What we have is we have competitions, and with competitions, what drives competition is self-interest, and with not human interest, not humanity or nature safety interest. So the individualistic interest, the different countries, you know, how many countries we have in the world, all of them pursuing their own specific interest, their own market advantage, their own economic advantage, their own, all right, technology, anything advantage will always be a challenge. We need to think globally, even when we act locally. If we don't do that like that, all right, we'll always create problem to the world. I think that's the most important thing that we need to. That's why I think this reimagination book is very, very, very good. And what I suggest strongly is that we need, how can we create transformative innovation system that will make the health, the livelihood, the well-being of all the people and the protection of nature the priority of priorities is very, very important. We need a new research productivity paradigm, a new education approach. Even the education system we have is also, with all the different disciplines we have, we need to find ways by which we can unify the knowledge world to address these concerns, all right, with new conceptual frames and theories. If we integrate these challenges with existing innovation systems and development, the problems will continue. First and foremost, there is a need to do rethinking both the whole innovation system approach as well as existing development economic theories to create sustainable development, all right, and nature safety and human safety. So there is a need to reconceptualize and reframe both innovation and development by unifying the health, the well-being, the social, the economic, knowledge, production, value chain process to sustain the livelihood of both the people and the protection of nature. This is very, very important. Forgive me, I was, when I was a student in Sussex University with Chris Freeman, I hope you can, I think Rajesh has seen my PhD thesis, and he, in fact, was sending me things, and I have forgotten what I wrote. It was surprising me. I wrote a thesis on capitalist technology and socialist human, all right? Even on my master's thesis, capitalist money, and how do we also, and then they're both very, very strong critique. In fact, the one on the capitalist money side, my supervisor was Robin Murray, and he was a chief economic advisor to London municipality, and can live, you know, there was a mayor, was a nice friendly mayor, Ken Livingston, and they even tried to use some of the suggestions we made about how we must not value money. If people value money, they can't value themselves. So the priority must be to use money, but sometimes even if there's a way not to use it, let's not use it too. So all the banks, the question you asked me, my friend, very, you know, I made a provocative, I learned a provocative knowledge from this reimagination of innovation from our brothers, Professor Lakhwinder and K. Joseph. What they did was amazing. From you know, but at the same time, you asked me a provocative question. So my answer to you is more or less to say, to be honest with you, we have to completely change the education system, the way we also do educate ourselves. All right, we actually created now a new university called Osiri University. It is a university that's going to make not just the teachers to teach, the students also can teach as they learn. And all of us are learners, and learners to not just achieve for us to do something, but to transform the community, to protect nature, to create health, all these things, and then also value also all the knowledge, the indigenous knowledge, the plants, everything, the biodiversity, everything we have. We're thinking about it like that. So my suggestion to all of you is, let's learn from this book to write another book And this another book, I think let's provoke our Professor Lakhwinder, since you did this on post-COVID one, let's do on post-climate change, post-COVID, post-poverty, post-inequality, all right, and post unemployment creation kind of thing. Some new book we need to imagine, and then to come out. And I hope when you do these conferences on India Leaks and Global Leaks and all this new approach will come. In fact, I'm also giving a lecture. I hope some of you will participate. Africa Leaks is the one that organized it on making Nobel laureates in this field. Why we need to include this approach is what I'm suggesting, and I hope one of you will be Nobel laureates if you continue to develop this book. So all of you, please go ahead. Let's work together, collaborate, not compete. All right, not value money, but value humanity and nature safety. And I think if we do like that, let's make health the best wealth. All right, let's not price everything and value nothing. I think if we go on this approach, we create a new world, all humanity to live in one world community with no war, with no conflict, all right, with no divisions, by using all the differences, but by valuing our differences and appreciating our similarity and our humanity and our nature safety is what we need. And I strongly recommend that we go for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Mammo Muchie, for your words of wisdom at the end. And I think we are very serious about what you have stated to be carried forward. With these words, I will not take much time because already we have exceeded more than half an hour from 40 minutes rather. And Rajesh has liberally allowed us to, stretch. And now I would like to just wind up saying thank you very much for this very lively panel. And the participants have made this session highly successful. So I'm grateful to all who have participated, those who have listened, and especially Professor Ruchi Sharma for enhancing the value of the book when making a presentation. Papia, you have added a huge amount of new dimensions which are expected to be covered. We will do it in the India Leaks, which is going to come in. And Mammo Muchie, you are always a source of inspiration as well as philosophical, thought-provoking kind of advice and lecture. So I think we are grateful to all of you and Rajesh for organizing this session and Renan for doing this beautiful job of introducing the speakers. We are grateful to all of you. Thank you very much, and hand it over to Rajesh again.
Renan, it is you who is in charge, and please continue to wind up.
Close.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you very much for everyone. I think it was a very lively panel. I'm super thankful also for all the panelists and the participants, to make your time to come here and contribute also with the CRIS network. I think that's very important for us, and then I can say even for myself as a early career, like a researcher, I think witnessing this sort of such deep and high level and at the same time super detailed discussions, it's super inspiring, and also it puts my head to work a lot. I'm definitely having a lot of thoughts and very interesting ones. So I think one thing that you can be very I think everyone very proud of is that I think you add a lot to us, and a lot to our early researchers as myself. This is, I'll take it very dearly in my heart this day. Thank you very much once more for everyone. Rajesh, I think we're gonna make this panel also available online in our website, right? And will you also have a YouTube link that we can send to everyone?
Sure. We will send
perfect.
you the YouTube link, and we are recording it. We are meticulously recording everything. So it will be made available.
Okay, perfect. Then thank you very much, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of the weekend.
Okay.
I hope we'll see each other soon. Thank you very much, everyone.